laptop. Anybody in here? Workstation?
Again, my personal laptop.
Missing Nicole, right?
Sure.
I'll just join. There you can start.
Welcome, everybody, to the Board of Trustees regular board meeting for Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. Tonight, we're doing a hybrid meeting. So you'll see 3 trustees live and in person at the Village Hall, and the other 4 trustees are appearing virtually. We'll have an equal opportunity to participate. The public also has an opportunity to participate virtually or in person. So is there a motion to open the meeting? Trustee Patino, second. I hate the kid's gonna keep doing this.
Well, there's
So,
everybody's on the
Trustee
screen.
Taylor, that's it. Meeting is officially open. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
You didn't vote, actually.
What?
You took a
All in
motion.
favor?
Yeah.
Meeting's open, meeting started.
Thank you.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first order of business tonight is to consider a resolution appointing Darlene McNerney as the senior account clerk. We do have a memo or a resolution regarding the appointment. Jeff, do you want to shed some light on this appointment?
We have had an open position in the treasurer's office since the end of August. And this individual is going to fill that role. And, had some good interviews with her. Seems like a very good candidate to me.
Okay, great. So is there a?
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, it's me. I just wanted to note in the resolution, the salary amount, the cents in that should be 00 and not 35.
Okay, so is there a motion to appoint Darlene McNerney to senior account clerk in the village treasurer's office? Trustee Casal, second. Trustee Taylor, all in favor? And that passes unanimously. I just want to read the part of the resolution that Liz referred to. Resolve that Darlene McNerney be appointed to the position of senior account clerk in the village treasurer's office effective on February 28th, 2022 at grade 11, step 1, in the amount of $65,159. And be it further resolved that this permanent appointment as senior account clerk, Darlene McNerney, shall be subject to a mandatory probationary period of up to 52 weeks pursuant to civil service rules. Darlene, welcome if you're listening to the position, and I'm sure we'll run into you one day. So good luck. The next item is courtesy of the floor. Is there anybody who wants to appear?
There is no one present, Mayor. In person or virtually.
This is the second meeting in a row that we've had no one, so I don't know if that means we're doing a good job or if no one is.
We're doing a good job.
The whole meetings are just fake now.
I get the sense sometimes that it is like that.
It is.
Somewhere Patty is watching.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on then to discussion and resolution items. We have a continuation of a discussion regarding the proposed revisions to Village Code, expanding the tree preservation and mandating restoration. We had a long discussion last meeting about this. And Valerie, we appreciate you coming to the meeting in person to, again, talk about the trees and your memo. So do you want to pick up where you left off?
Sure. Why don't I just sort of give a brief overview of the changes that are being proposed from what's currently allowed in your zoning code to what is the draft local law in front of you. So basically, the changes are going to allow for an expansion of what would be required for a tree permit. So currently, your tree regulations require permits for 6 inches for specimen trees, as well as clear cutting, which is a cutting of 10 trees or more on a property within the 12-month period. And the proposed tree removal permitting regulations require tree permits that fall within a DBH of 8 inches or more, but then also trees with diameter, DBH is diameter breast height. Diameter breast height of 3 inches or greater located in wetland areas on steep slopes, as well as trees that have been planted for specific requirements during site plan development, and a tree of unique or historic value to the village. And then also trees of 3 inches or more that have been designated by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation as protected native plants for our region. Also, what would be required is clear cutting. If and now the clear cutting definition would be 5 trees or more as opposed to 10 trees, which is in your current code. And then also tree removal proposed in connection with any site plan or subdivision application submitted to the planning board for approval. The current law allows for certain exemptions. We are proposing to bring a lot of those exemptions into the new local law. The only difference there is that we expanded it a little bit to allow for some additional emergency tree removal, as well as protected trees that present an unacceptable risk. And what we are proposing to do is incorporate an assessment from a certified arborist, so that they do have to provide certain documentation, but it does allow for trees that are in a situation of emergencies to be removed, as well as ones that are, for example, in an invasive species list would also be allowed to be removed without a tree permit. We're also in comparison for tree replacement, the current tree law does not require any tree replacement when you seek a tree permit or take down a tree. And the new law would allow or would require all tree permits, subdivision and site plan applications to have a minimum of a 50% replacement requirement. So basically what it is the diameter breast height the diameter of the trees that you're removing, 50% of those that diameter would need to be replaced on the property. So it does allow for you're removing trees, but you are also replacing those as well. And then also the current law does not have any provisions for the removal of public trees. The proposed law would have requirement of the village if they are allowed to remove trees, and they wouldn't necessarily require a tree permit, but it would require a recommendation from the tree commission prior to removal of those particular trees. And again, we're not talking about emergency situations, those are exempt, but these would be trees that, the village decided that they needed to remove, and then it would require a recommendation from the tree commission. And then finally, the current law does not have a special purpose tree fund. The new law would allow for a tree fund specifically for violations. And then also what we're suggesting is a payment in lieu of. So for example, if you do have to require your particular project requires tree replacement, but you're not able to replace all the trees that 50% diameter, then working with the tree commission, you could, let's just say you're going to replace 25% of that diameter, and then the other 25% would be in the payment in lieu of into the tree fund, which then would allow the village to plant trees throughout the village or other types of projects. And that we still need to finalize exactly what the use of that tree fund would be, but that's something that we can work out as well.
Couple things. If you looked at this closely, the last time it was on our agenda, the two big differences between the proposed code change that I think it was 2 weeks ago now have been the addition of this wetland area. So the diameter, the DBH size in a wetland or steep slope has been added or slightly changed to be a little stronger. And then that trees owned by the village or on village property would go to the tree commission as well. So those are the two components that are different in what's in front of us today as opposed to being in front of us 2 weeks ago. Was there anything else? I think there were some other sort of minor changes, but those are the two. I think those are the two.
Yeah, a lot of them were more administrative and just cleaning up the local law. Once we received a positive, comments from the board, then we went in and just cleaned it up a little bit, tightened the definitions, and also established, a little bit more on who the roles, between the village board, the tree commission, and also the building department.
Part of that came about as from comments that came from the tree commission and CAB after our last meeting. So we got together and sort of worked out which of those we thought were relevant and pertinent, and a good number of those comments made it into this revised draft.
Okay. Matt, do you have anything you want to add or ask?
No.
Okay. Does anybody, other trustees, have anything they want to ask or add?
Yeah, how come they went from, I think I know the answer, but just for, we used to be 6-inch diameter, now it's 3-inch diameter.
The
How much of
three
an
is
impact will that make?
the 3 is only for wetlands or steep slopes or some particular protected type of species. The protected tree is an 8-inch DBH. Is that right? Did we say, yeah, 8-inch DBH? So that's a typical tree. It's only in areas where, like a wetland, for example, you don't get trees. There are different species of trees. They're generally smaller. On a steep slope, a smaller tree will help stabilize the steep slope. So there's a certain rationale behind lowering that threshold in those sensitive areas.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
I just want to point out and make sure that we're clear that in terms of the removal of public trees, they'll be making, it's an application, but it's not a permit application per se, to the tree commission for their recommendation. So the tree commission may require some further evidence, which would mean the village would have to pick up the cost of a certified arborist. And it's in here, it's sort of, it has to be provided, it has to be provided if it's requested. So just, it does have some ramifications. We don't have a village arborist per se, but we do have a number of arborists that routinely do work here in the village, usually in connection with the tree removal. So it would be part of the proposal from that tree company that they would have to provide this evidence and present it to the village for use at the tree commission.
I do have one question. The public tree piece of it, are we going to trip over ourselves at all on the Main Street sidewalk redesign, which requires taking down some public trees? If we enact this before then, are we creating a bump that we have to get over before we can actually do that work?
I'm going to not directly answer that question, but
All right then.
indirectly answer that question. The reason that I think this is a valuable component of this code revision is that the village should be leading by example as a sort of general rule. And so if we hold ourselves to a lesser standard than we ask our neighbors, our community to, I think we are in the wrong
I don't disagree.
and so I think that's, but I think there are instances where the greater good prevails despite the desire to maintain the tree. And so there are examples of that, sidewalks, I think, are a good example of that. And so the idea would be to, I think it's less about those kind of projects. And I think when the tree commission, if this part of the code remains in place, depending how everyone feels. That's what's weighed at the tree commission. And if the tree commission thinks that we should try to replant and add a tree well, for example, or rather than have 3, add a 4th tree well with smaller trees in it, that may be the outcome. So I don't know if we're going to trip up over ourselves, but I think we could get some valuable input from.
My question was really very much more practical, which is there's a ticking clock on getting that piece of work done, and whether we are putting a timeout of a month or something for that process to play out and risking that ticking clock.
Well, I think we could just ask the tree commission to have a special meeting for our.
Okay.
So we don't lose our grant money.
All right.
Donna?
Yeah, I just want to point out, you know me, I always like to find out what could possibly go wrong. Having a tree commission, having the village be answerable to a tree commission gives me a little pause. I can definitely see going to the tree commission for recommendations, for ideas, but the village should be able to supersede any decisions by the tree commission, only because we do that with every other board.
It's the way that the draft is written is that it's a recommendation by the
Right,
tree
recommendation is fine, but I was hearing that, oh, they could trip us up, they could stop us. And I don't think that that's in the best, well, I'm all for this tree thing. I mean, I just think we have to be careful that we don't do something that's going to jeopardize the sovereignty of the village.
It's an advisory board, so yes,
Right.
the advice would be provided.
So it couldn't trip us up.
If there's any,
Correct?
No, because the tree commission cannot usurp the
That's what I want to get
decision-making
clear. Yeah.
of the Board of Trustees. So no, it's certainly an advisory board. And if you look at the draft, it's written in such a way that it's to obtain this recommendation from people who are knowledgeable. So
I think the question was really about process, so that if this tree law is enacted during the process in which that Main Street project is moving forward, whether that.
We lost sound. I lost sound.
I still hear you, Donna.
Oh, okay. I had lost sound.
Lost them. She's frozen. Valerie's frozen.
Oh, okay. That's why.
I think we lost Village Hall.
That happened during the
Yeah.
planning board meeting.
Village Hall is frozen.
One of the things that I was going to suggest on that might allay any concerns you have is we could actually put explicit language in there saying, any recommendation of the tree commission is, subject to being superseded by a decision of the board of
Yeah.
trustees.
I mean, I'm all
You could
for
put
going
one-
to the tree commission. I just been around long enough to know what could go wrong.
No, you could make it explicit with one sentence, that
Yes,
if the village
exactly.
believes something's for the greater good of the village, the board could make a decision unilaterally.
Yeah.
I don't see how anybody would object to that, and even if it's implied by the circumstances, why not put it in there explicitly?
We've lost Village Hall.
I hope you come back because I had a couple of questions.
Well, I like hanging out with you guys, so, we can
Are we still being recorded?
probably.
Yes, yeah, we are. So
Okay.
So it's, and I'm not sure they're still there, so we do have a lot of business tonight. I don't know,
Yes.
did somebody reach out to the village? Hopefully they know that we're not available, or they're not available. I'm not sure, one or the other.
who would we reach out to? Just Vinny or?
I'll reach out to Jen.
Okay.
She's there.
Oh, here we go. I think they're
Are they
back
back?
now.
Oh, there they are. Okay.
They're muted. It's muted, but they're back. There we go.
We can't be muted.
Donna, is there anything you wanted to add?
Oh, we already had the discussion. You didn't hear us.
You can watch the recording though.
Watch the recording. No,
Didn't
I was
record,
just-
that's the problem.
But Larry had a good idea as to what we could do to prevent, again, a possible mishap, because we know the all best intentions sometimes trip us up.
And Larry?
Larry, do you want to repeat what you said?
Sure, I was just saying we could add probably with one sentence, a clause that just made it explicit that if it was deemed by the board to be in the village's best interest, the board's decision would supersede the recommendations of the tree commission, even though that's implied by the fact it's an advisory board. We could actually put it in the code.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions.
Moot point. It's already it's only a recommendation. It's there. The issue's covered. I mean,
Go ahead, Nicole.
What if somebody has like an emergency? Do they still have to follow this? Is there some like expedited procedure? And is there some time frame in this? Like if I want to remove a tree and I put in my application in January, could I be sitting there waiting for approval till like May or something?
the first part is that there's always been an emergency tree removal. And the tree commission doesn't meet often enough to deal with that. And so the building inspector has always been the responsible party for emergency tree removal requests. And so if you come to the building department with that request, if it's a hazard, then that generally gets dealt with in the same day. I don't know, in part, the lack of clarity for the process of the tree removal permit has led to a lot of frustration on behalf of a lot of residents. And so I think part of this will help improve that timeline, reduce that timeline, because it's clear what you're supposed to do, what's a protected tree, what is not a protected tree. And I think if you read through this section of the code, if you are looking to do that, it's clear what you are supposed to do, and in which case you need a permit or not. No matter what you're doing, you have to go to the building department with the request. How long that takes, I mean, I don't know that this is going to increase the time period that it takes. I mean, permits, I don't know. I'd like to have Dan comment on this, though he's not here. They're couple 3-week turnaround time generally.
Okay.
And it's the same with the tree. Tree commission meets twice a month. Is it twice a month or twice a month? I believe it's twice a month.
Twice a month. Yep.
So, they usually have a pretty full agenda, and they usually deal with them in a timely manner if the materials are there. I mean, that's the other thing. A lot of times someone puts in an application, doesn't, they have 30 trees in their property. They didn't tie a ribbon around it. Nobody knows what they're looking at. So there's a lot of complaints about this process. And there's not a lot of adherence to the rules. So.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that, people didn't get delayed because, not that the tree commission has to decide something in the first meeting per se, but that, there's like a mechanism. So if somebody does come in with the right paperwork and stuff, it gets decided in a reasonable amount of time versus,
we struggled with adding a sort of tree warden component to this, where we would have someone who was responsible for doing that. And the reason I was reluctant to add that is because it would add cost to the whole process. And so if every tree that's going to be removed is assessed by a professional, there's an additional fee that gets added on to the applicant's overall fee. So you're taking down a small tree on your property. You now need to pay for this village tree warden, you need to pay your arborist and the fee. And so, I wanted to cut out at least one component of that, and that's the paid tree warden. I think we lost him again.
No,
Are you guys still there?
Cole's drinking.
So you're right. You point out something that was part of our debate on this, and we shied away from it for cost. So I think if somebody were to have a large project and request such a thing, and we're willing to pay for it, it's a pretty easy thing for us to do. But I don't know. It's open for discussion. If other people feel that the timeline is more important.
I mean, it's something we could always come back to revisit if, right? I think they're frozen now. We always come back and revisit the law if it's not working. Whenever I'm there in person, Zoom works.
Did we lose them
fine.
again?
Every time it works perfectly fine. How I'm on
Right.
a meeting tonight and it's not working at all. So I guess I should go to Village Hall more often.
Oh, that they're, I don't know. Maybe they should be home.
I won't be, I won't be at the
Jen,
next
can you hear
meeting. So you guys won't have my call off.
Jen, can you hear us?
I just, all right, I'm talking to her right now, Donna.
Oh, okay, I just texted her, yeah. Well, we do have a quorum.
I hope we can get through this.
Hmm.
Nicole. Okay.
Okay.
Don't be so still.
I know.
It confuses us.
Okay.
Anyway, all I was going to say is that before we got cut off is that, if we find it's not working, Mike, I think your debate's right and probably the right outcome. And if in practice it stops working, we can always revisit it and change it later.
That's where we landed, is that I'd rather keep the cost low. Usually taking a tree down is not an urgent matter, it can wait a couple extra weeks. And so, and if it is an urgent matter, you could request,
Yeah, I'd like to just point out, the idea of keeping the cost down. We don't want to make this too onerous on our residents, so that they start taking tree down without permits because they don't want to pay all the fees and stuff.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear about these changes because years ago I had to have a tree taken down that was going to fall on my neighbor's roof, and it took 6 months to get the necessary approval and everything from
Oh,
the
wow.
village. So this sounds a lot better than
Yeah.
that was then. So all good with me.
And I want to point out also that there's an emergency provision in here as well.
Yeah.
Because say a storm comes up on a Friday night and it takes partially takes a tree down to the extent where it's now creating a hazard. Based upon enough evidence, you can take that down, and within 5 days of removing that very dangerous emergency situation, you then take that proof, and after the fact, the village, gives you the approval. This is often the outlet that's provided by other communities of this nature because of the increase in storms and the number of storms that have been very detrimental on these aging trees and trees in areas which are undermining the root system and that kind of thing. So there is a provision in the emergency removal section.
Right, there is, and there's also provisions for the removal of a tree that has been found to be dead, dying, insect infested, as well as the invasive species. And those
Yes.
just, again, do not need the tree permits.
Yes. And should the fire department or emergency services, police department or emergency services determine the need to remove a tree, of course, that's outside of the scope of this as well. I can, if it's hampering the ability to fight a fire or hampering the ability for emergency access to something, obviously, that's in here as well. The emergency procedure will be waived under those circumstances.
Okay, so to move this forward, we have to, schedule a public hearing? Is that what we-
No, you can ask for the law to be drafted at this point. If you're satisfied with the provisions and the procedure as laid out, I can get that to you for the next agenda and you can set the public hearing thereafter. Keep in mind that this is a provision of your zoning code. So we'll need to set ourselves enough time. New York State Village Law requires an additional timeline for notice if you're revising zoning code. So I'll work with Liz on that. We've done a couple of zoning revisions in the past. We'll get it done. And we'll actually, it's easier to workshop in this form, but now it'll come back with the bracketed and the underlined and that stuff that makes your head explode. So we'll make it pretty, make it meet the form it needs to in order to be filed. And you can set the public hearing at your next meeting. We'll have a resolution prepared. I think we had discussed this.
Are they gone again? Jen said it had something to do with the Wi-Fi.
And they don't have a quorum there, so they really can't conduct any business.
We can just take over the
I was
building.
gonna say, we could just forge ahead,
Take over the-
make our statements.
Everything is discussion. And, the thing is that what we're discussing tonight, I mean, normally if we could just go through the agenda and approve
Right.
things, we could do that. But
Right.
the discussions
No, we
tonight.
can't. I
pretty
know.
serious. Everybody
It's
has
heavy
to
duty. Yeah.
participate. Anything we can take care of?
Lee and Valerie to put together the law, and then when we have it, we will then schedule a public hearing as required by the law. Moving along to discussion item number 2 is to consider a resolution to certify and approve the 2020-2021 Dobbs Ferry Volunteer Firefighter Service Awards points listing as submitted by the Dobbs Ferry Volunteer Fire Department. I think we do this every year as required by law, where we get a list of the service credits that the volunteers did over the course of the year, and this goes towards their service credit for, I guess, a pension going forward.
That's correct. That's correct, Max. Yes.
So is there a motion to certify and approve the 2020 to 2021 Dobbs Ferry Volunteer Firefighter Service Awards point listing as submitted by the Dobbs Ferry Volunteer Fire Department? Trustee Rosenberg, second. Trustee Patino, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Okay, discussion number 3 is to consider resolutions leading to settlement of certain actions for tax certiorari having index numbers 67360/16, 66680/17, 67160/18, and 66751/19, and having index numbers 67063/18, 67656/19, 62758/20, and 65217/21A, all of which concern property located at Landing Drive and Hudson Drive. So in English, this will be we're addressing today the tax certiorari filed by the Landing. I do have a statement I read, and all the trustees will also weigh in with their thoughts and comments, then we'll put it to a vote. Laura Lee, is there anything you want to add at all at this particular time?
No, I just want to clarify that the resolutions are as to the portion of refunds related to village taxes only. That the other portions need to be voted separately by the other assessing units, especially the school district, which will be taking up similar resolutions in an effort to settle rather than prolong the lengthy litigation. So this is action related to settling the village portion of the tax certiorari matter.
They're frozen again.
You should probably hop on somebody's hotspot instead of the village Wi-Fi.
It's like, yeah, so just use their cell phones, yeah, use cellular data.
Maybe they could move into another room. They know we can't hear them, right?
I believe so. I don't know.
Because this is pretty important stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to start at the beginning. The board will be voting tonight on resolutions that will resolve property tax litigation initially brought in 2018 by the Landing on the Water in Dobbs Ferry and involving the village of Dobbs Ferry, the Dobbs Ferry Union Free School District, the town of Greenberg, and the county of Westchester. The litigation involves a significant reduction in assessment value. We would like to provide some context for those Dobbs Ferry citizens and taxpayers who will be affected by the settlement of this litigation and resulting reallocation of taxes village-wide. In 1964, the New York State passed the Condominium Act with the goal of providing a path to home ownership to people who had been renting apartments and who were predominantly lower-income people. Unfortunately, one unintended consequence of the law was that it created a loophole by which a number of more affluent taxpayers also converted their communities to condos and significantly lowered their property taxes. In an effort to ward off the ramifications of a conversion, the town of Greenberg, which is the assessing unit for Dobbs Ferry properties, passed a local law closing this loophole. For reasons still unclear, the law became caught up in a technical delay at the New York State Secretary of State. The Board of Education passed a similar resolution in 2019, but neither of the laws were filed in sufficient time to avoid the litigation we are now party to. In 2018, the Landing filed the paperwork to make such a conversion from single-family residences to condominiums, which result in a significant tax savings for the unit holders. This action has commenced the litigation that is the subject of this settlement. At this point, both local laws are now in full effect and the loophole is now closed, but neither of those laws could be used to dismiss this litigation outright. The Village Board of Trustees takes very seriously our responsibility to protect our taxpayers. Of every tax dollar collected in Dobbs Ferry, about 67% goes to the school district, 20% to the village, and 13% to the town and county. We have been working with the Board of Education and the town jointly on this litigation for over 3 years. The village's defense hinged on several arguments, none of which had ever been litigated before. While the Board of Trustees believes our arguments were persuasive, it was not possible to tell with certainty how the court would handle the situation, and the appeals process could have dragged it out for several more years, during which potential refunds and accrued interest would continue to build, as with the attorney's fees surrounding the village's defense.
No.
Considering there would be no guarantee as to the outcome of this case and pressure from the court to settle, the village is authorizing a settlement that we believe will provide the least negative effect on many taxpayers in our community. And so today we are voting to do so. The Board of Trustees is not unanimous in this decision, and no member is happy about it. In assessing the risks and going forward with litigating this case, the board is authorizing this settlement, which provide no tax refunds to the landing for the years 2018 and 2019, saving a total of combined $2.6 million, plus interest that might have been risked if the litigation had continued and ultimately been lost. The Board of Trustees as a body is choosing to focus on that savings. Based upon the advice of legal counsel, the desire to settle by the school board and the town, the attendant risks of litigation, and the possibility of an ultimate adverse judgment that could lead to a significantly worse outcome, the board has decided to authorize this settlement so that we know exactly what the effect is for all taxpayers in the community. Each board member weighed the options for moving forward, and some will provide personal thoughts on their decision-making process. The arguments are all in good faith and have value, yet at the end of it, there has to be a vote. So what is the impact of this on the average non-landing homeowner? Basing solely on this settlement, property taxes will likely increase. Assuming no change in assessment year over year, a home assessed at $500,000 may see an estimated increase across all the entities that collect property taxes of approximately $345 per year. And a home assessed at $1 million may see an estimated increase across all the entities that collect property taxes of approximately $690. These numbers are estimates, and the actual impact may vary. The fact that the outcome could have been worse, we recognize may not provide as much comfort as we would have liked to have delivered. However, property taxes are based upon the tax levy and the assessment of each property. There are variables that contribute to the tax levy and property assessments every year. Therefore, we cannot provide you with the exact impact the settlements will have. This has been a difficult debate for the Board of Trustees to have. Our primary concern throughout and unanimously was to do all that we could to legally protect the taxpayers while putting this litigation behind us. We recognize that it will continue to impact our taxpayers. We will continue to do all that we can to mitigate these impacts. So to move this forward, I have to have a motion. Consider a resolution to. Well, I already read all that. So what's the point
Yeah,
of saying
so
that,
just
right?
consider a
So
motion.
Consider a motion to adopt the resolution as outlined in our packet, and I'm going to read this very briefly. This is a resolution approving settlement of action for tax certiorari on property located at Landing Drive and Hudson Drive. Whereas the proceedings were commenced in New York State Supreme Court, Westchester County, to challenge the tax assessment for a portion of property located at Landing Drive and Hudson Drive by owner the Landing on the Water at Dobbs Ferry Condominium / the Landing on the Water at Dobbs Ferry Homeowners Association. Whereas it has been recommended by the Board of Whereas it has been recommended to the Board of Trustees by its assessor and attorney to resolve this litigation. And whereas the Board of Trustees has had an opportunity to review the proceedings and has determined that this proposed settlement is fair and reasonable and is in the best interest of the village, now therefore be it resolved, the Board of Trustees authorizes the village treasurer to issue refunds of village property taxes on the common property for the 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019 tax years set in the amount set forth in the anticipated refund column on the schedule at the end of this resolution, subject to adjustment by an increase of not more than 5% or reduction in any amount upon final calculation after entry of consent judgment, implementing the settlement in the aforementioned matters. And in this first resolution, in the tax year 2017, the anticipated refund will be $196.82. In the year 2018, the anticipated refund will be $196.73. And in the year 2019, the anticipated refund will be $195.70. In the 2020, the anticipated refund will be $195.69. Before
I don't know. Not good. Bad timing.
So we wouldn't be.
Yeah, I've asked if they could phone in so we can at least hear them.
So just to finish off what you were saying, Laura Lee, this
Yes.
particular resolution.
This
pertains to
resolution
the-
is to the common areas of what is now the condominium association. The second resolution presupposes a settlement, and it has significantly higher refunds of village taxes. It is related to the condominiums themselves.
Okay, so is there a motion as I outlined previously?
Can't discuss it unless somebody moves
Trustee
it.
Sullivan, second. Trustee Rosen Asher, thank you. Okay, now we could discuss this matter, and I know everyone does have an opinion that they would like to state. I think we should do it in order of seniority. So Deputy Mayor Casal, you're up.
Okay, give me just a second to get this up here.
You don't have seconds, unfortunately.
Okay, here we go. I often tell new trustees that one of the hardest things they may ever have to do is to vote for something that they personally disagree with, but need to do so because it is the best interest of the village as a whole. This is the position that I find myself in tonight. I am not happy that we have to agree to this settlement. I would rather have fought this out in court to prevent what I believe is unfair to many of our residents. However, the possibility of losing in court and the subsequent severe financial impact a loss would have on our taxpayers overweighs my personal feelings. We have all worked very hard and very long to defeat this action taken by the landing. Unfortunately, as the mayor pointed out, there were legal and logistical complications beyond our control. I also want to give a special thank you to Trustee Sullivan and Trustee Rosenberg for their Herculean efforts. They have made the settlement considerably more acceptable than it might have been. The consequences of granting the certiorari tonight will result in a raise in property taxes for most Dobbs Ferry homeowners. If not now, certainly in the future. As board members, we need to be mindful of this and to work with the administration, department heads, and staff to keep expenses down as much as possible while still maintaining necessary services. And I hope the school board does the same. So now it is time to put all this behind us, to make sure that Dobbs Ferry continues to be the best place the best place to live for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Deb.
I wonder if there was a storm I missed today. I was in Dobbs Ferry all day. It's caused the Wi-Fi just not to work in the village.
And that's something that should be on an agenda.
Oh, yeah.
I think about that every time I'm trying to do
Yeah,
a book call. I'm
broadband,
back with my
okay.
kids from school because I dropped calls.
Okay.
Well, the whole system was just upgraded, so it's particularly frustrating that it's not working.
I would guess you're up next though, Larry, so.
I am,
He was
And-
running, he was unmuted.
and I think it's probably best to share my opinion with everyone rather than just the four of you.
Well, it's also being
Well,
recorded.
If we're online, I'm not confident that we are actually online, but if we are, at least whoever's here from the public would hear, but let's wait till we get back going again.
Guy told us we are online, but I know we're recording, so it's gonna be published to the website anyway.
Right, so what's gonna be recorded is us, not the people in the room.
Talk fast, please.
You were on mute. He didn't hear you.
What?
You were on mute. He didn't hear you.
Okay, Larry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will be brief. Sometimes the right decision is a very difficult decision. The combination of New York state law, circumstances, and decisions by the landing puts the village in an extremely difficult situation, and one which unfortunately is going to serve to the detriment of most taxpayers in the village, to the benefit of others. That having been said, we're in a situation where, after having worked on this for a number of years, the best outcome is one that, although it's hard to accept a settlement, where a settlement is the right choice for the village for financial and other reasons, to be able to put this behind us, to be able to move forward, and to be able to minimize the risk of a worse outcome going forward. And for those reasons, I will be voting for the settlement.
Trustee Sullivan.
I just want to say that I agree with everything that Donna said. I feel like it was very well said, but of course, being a lawyer, I'm going to speak again anyway. But I agree wholeheartedly with what her and Larry have said so far. This was a very difficult decision for all of us. I think we all take our fiduciary obligations to the village seriously. As somebody who practices litigation, I looked at this certiorari proceeding and all the arguments from every different angle that I could possibly imagine. And I didn't see a scenario where there wasn't significant risk to the village that we could lose this at the end of a long drawn out litigation, which was guaranteed to go to the appellate divisions, which at the end of the day, if we lost a few years from now, I think as the mayor said in his statement, would put the village and its residents at a significant worse position than it would be today. There were just simply too many hurdles in the litigation that allowed for scenarios where we would be on the losing end of it. So I feel like the village was put between a rock and a hard place. I wish we had never been put in this position, but we were. We fought it as hard as we could, and I think we've gotten the best settlement that we could, and a much better settlement than we would have received had we done this in 2018 or 19. So I just feel that this is the best and most fiscally responsible decision that I could make for the village. So I'm voting in favor of this settlement, although I'm not happy about it.
Mike,
Putting
Happened again. I thought it happened during me speaking because Jen popped off and on, so I got distracted and I was like, did they lose me?
We'll be talking with A1 tomorrow, believe me.
This happened during the planning board meeting too. I was hoping they would have had it fixed by now.
I didn't know that was happening during the planning board. I don't know if Melissa did or not.
I really want to hear what Michael Patino is saying.
Me
Yeah.
too. He's not gonna want to repeat it.
Mhm.
Probably didn't write it down either, so it's like off the cuff.
Somebody let them know that this is not.
Yeah, I did. I texted.
Thank you.
Oh, he's probably not looking at his phone though.
I didn't text him.
Oh.
I'm relying on Jen because she's the one who kind of really watches everything.
I feel terrible that we can't hear him. I'm sure he worked really hard on it.
Yeah. Should we go ahead and approve the audits? I don't.
Mm.
Melissa said that they can hear us, but we lost the feed.
They can hear us?
Jen's still on. Maybe but we can't hear or see them.
Yeah, they should use their phones and dial in.
Yeah.
Use their phones for sound.
Thought I kept my comments about the mayor to myself.
Hmm.
Okay, Mike.
Did you guys hear that?
Yeah, there we go.
All right. Just putting aside my personal feelings on this and looking at it solely from a risk assessment criteria, it seemed that we had a fairly, sort of even chance of losing this if we took it through to the end litigation. And when I weigh that factor against what we are losing, which is an indefinite period of time, paying this additional tax burden, and what we're trading off in the settlement, which is only 2 years that we would be not refunding in the past, it's hard for me to agree to a settlement where we're giving up so much and risking so little if we were to follow it through. So I am not in favor of this settlement.
Shari?
Okay. I was dismayed as a new trustee to really find out the depth and breadth of this particular situation, and that it has taken up so much time and energy and resources of the village. And for me, it comes down to respect, responsibility, and repercussions. And from my vantage point, there was not a lot of shared respect given to the village by the landing in trying to do what they were doing. And that's disconcerting when we live in a village that's as small as Dobbs Ferry. We want to all try to recognize that we have a responsibility to one another. And with that responsibility comes repercussions. So if you do something, something else will happen. There were mistakes made that kind of led to all of this, and there's a long history, and I tried to do my due diligence to sit with the attorneys to find out the exact timeline. And when it comes to a risk versus reward scenario, if I'm making that decision for myself, then I may choose to do something one way. But as was discussed before, we have a fiscal responsibility to every citizen of Dobbs Ferry. And for me, the risk involved in taking this to litigation was something that was too risky and could wind up being way more expensive than this. And I think, as Donna said, we may need to cut some expenses, but I also think we need to explore new revenue streams. And if we're looking for new ways to create tax revenue, I would urge us to vote again on cannabis. But for this particular issue, it's very complicated, it's very complex, and it was very disturbing to see the level of animosity. So I am voting to go through with the settlement, try to put this behind us and move forward as a village in some united fashion.
At least you got through your statement before we lost connection again. It's very well timed, it appears.
Matt's going to think we did it on purpose.
But for recording purposes, they can't hear them, right? Like, so it's not just that we can't hear them?
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know either.
Jeff, do you know?
No.
The expense of having two forms of internet coming into the village hall would seem worth pursuing.
We're working on that. We're working on that.
Because
But I
if
think-
one does fail or become unreliable the way this one did, to have a backup would be very helpful.
Right, here's a perfect example. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Mhm.
I mean, even if they go to cellular data in some way,
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Shari, I hate to say this, but we didn't hear half the things you had to say.
You didn't?
It's real good.
Oh my God, I don't write it. I don't write anything down. I totally improvise, but I'll go through it again. I'll just be really brief. I mean, basically, this is a very difficult, complicated issue. And it was upsetting to me personally to see the animosity and the level that it got to when we're a small village. And I would love to see us try to, move forward. So it came down to respect for one another. It came down to responsibility that we all have to one another. And then the repercussions when you don't take those two things seriously. And because the risk involved in the potential reward, if we went to litigation, was too great, in my opinion, when I'm gambling with other people's money, I think it's in the best interest to accept the settlement and try to move forward. What I might do personally, if this was my money, might be a different thing, but it is not for me to gamble with the taxpayers' money. And I think that one of the things we need to do, besides considering that we may have to cut expenses, is to find new sources of revenue. So I'm going to use this opportunity to once again say we should vote again on the cannabis issue, because that would be a tax revenue stream. So I am voting in favor of the settlement, because as a new trustee, I would like to move on to dealing with all the people in the village and the ways that we can help them. And this has taken a lot of time and resources for everybody. So, it's not great. I don't love it, but I am voting in favor of the settlement.
I will attempt to cut my 40-minute version of this down to something considerably shorter. I disagree that this is a financially prudent decision. I agree with Michael that the risk here is de minimis in comparison with what we know we are giving away. And I think that today in this vote is a terrible day for Dobbs Ferry, and it's a terrible day for the very idea of what it means to be a community. We saw Dobbs Ferry at its best, neighbor helping neighbor, this past week, as it seems like the whole town turned out to help search for one family's dog. That's being part of a community together. And here we are voting to give in to 100 or so families' desire to cut their taxes on the backs of the rest of us. The landing would not have been approved in 1999 when it was as a development had the taxes not been, it was their offer. The taxes that we will spin off are massive, and they will mitigate all of the things that you don't like about this development. And there were many, including Wickers Creek, environmental damage, burden on village services, and the schools. And now here they are taking all that back and saying that they deserve to pay $1 million and change less in taxes just because they can. And that's really the way they phrased it in their lawsuit. They said that it's not a question of whether they should be allowed to do this. It's just that they are allowed to do it. So they're at least self-aware enough to know how selfish this action is. What they don't seem to have is any sense of appropriate shame about it. So let's think about who this affects, because money is an abstract until you really think about how it affects people. It seems like a $700 increase isn't that much next to $1 million home, but think about who's in a lot of those homes. My parents came to Dobbs Ferry in 1969. They bought their home for $45,000, if you can believe it. It's a nice home. It's assessed way more than that today. My dad's 91, retired a couple of decades ago, and their house is assessed over $1 million. They pay close to $40,000 in taxes, which is greater than Social Security. And this isn't about my parents. It's about the fact that there's a lot of longtime residents, people who are past their earning years, who have home values that might make you think that they're wealthy, but they don't have the cash flow to actually be able to afford to stay in those homes. An extra $700 is a lot to those people. And Dobbs has also suffered a drain in the multi-generational families that used to, be a large part of the population of this village. High taxes have made it hard for them to pass their homes down to the next generations. And that's not all about the landing. Taxes are high without this, but another big hit is going to make it even more difficult for folks to stay where they put down their roots generations ago. 65% of the homes in Dobbs Ferry don't have kids in the school. Do we want to turn into a place where it doesn't make any sense at all to live if there's not a 5 to 18-year-old in the house with you? And again, this is not all about the landing. It's about high taxes in general. But if we care about Dobbs Ferry's future and think about the kind of village we want to be, every big jump in taxes puts that future at risk. Now, I grant that, we had persuasive arguments. They hadn't been tried in court before. There were some risks, but yet when we met with the Board of Education and they seemed very clear that they wanted to settle, that took the wind out of our sails. That made it a lot more difficult to contemplate going forward, because going forward without the Board of Education, which, as the mayor said, is 67% of the tax dollar, that means that we would be fighting for something a lot smaller. And that seemed a lot less worth it. I personally will not vote in favor of what I consider an abuse of a law that is tantamount to just sticking your hand in your neighbor's pocket and pulling out their wallet. I would vote to try this case as far as it goes, because fighting for a just cause is always the right thing to do. And giving into selfishness is never the right thing to do, unless you want selfish to come back for another taste tomorrow. I'm going to vote no.
Thank you, everybody. And I think, as we alluded to, this was our first really big decision as a new board. And I want to thank everyone for the time and energy, especially Shari and Matt for, jumping in the middle of this, and especially Matt, who's been really involved with this since day one. I want to thank him for all the insight that he's given to us and for his work towards providing information for us. So thank you, Matt. And I especially also want to thank Nicole for all the work that she's put into this. She spent countless hours as well in reviewing documents and reviewing legal arguments and cases. And I want to thank her. She's been a great help to the board for all the effort that she's done. So thank you for your efforts, both Nicole and Matt. Everyone has spent a lot of hours and time on these. And as we've said repeatedly, we're never going to all agree on an issue. It's important, I think, that we don't always agree on issues. We all come at it from different perspectives. But the key is that we have respect for each other's point of view and that we all do the work necessary to achieve an educated decision. So having said that, let's put it to a vote. All in favor of this resolution, raise your hand.
Begrudgingly.
Okay, that passes. Right. Okay, all against, raise your hand. Okay, so that passes 5-2. Did you get that, Liz?
Yes.
Now we'll move on to the second resolution, which that's the one that's costing us the money. So I just wanted
Can I
to,
read the statement again after that?
I'm just gonna say, you can read it twice as hard.
Spanish version.
I just want to highlight some of the key components of that. Whereas the proceedings were commenced in New York State Supreme Court to challenge the tax assessment of property located at Landing Drive and Hudson Drive, whereas the village is not an assessing authority, having assigned that role to the town of Greenberg, but the approval by the village board of trustees is required before the village treasurer can properly issue any refund of village taxes. Whereas no refund by the village will be due for 2022 if all parties formally approve the settlement prior to March 1, 2022. Whereas it has been recommended to the Board of Trustees by its assessor and attorney to resolve this litigation. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the village attorney to execute a consent judgment settling the claims in all respects with assessed values for 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 tax years as set forth in the assessed value reduced to column on the schedule at the end of this resolution. And be further resolved that refunds for the 2019, 2020, and 2021 tax years are authorized in the amount set forth in the anticipated refund column on the schedule at the end of these resolutions. And let's just make it clear, and I'm going to say it so that everyone could listen and understand that for the year 2019, the anticipated refund to the landing is $0. For the year 2020, the anticipated refund to the landing is $0. And for the year 2021, the anticipated refund would be $274, $179.92. Is there a motion to accept the settlement in the resolution as I've outlined? Trustee Taylor, second. Somebody has to second the motion.
In order for it to get to a vote, we need a second.
Thank you, Trustee Rosen Asher. I don't know if there's any further discussion. I think we've all said what we had to say. So all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it's 5 in favor, all against, raise your hand. It's 2 against. Motion passes. Liz, you got it? As I said, this is a very difficult situation for all of us. It's taken a lot of resources, a lot of time, and I do appreciate everyone's efforts and work on this matter. Let's go on to discussion item number 4, which is consider a resolution regarding uncollected fees associated with an accounting error. I do think we have a memo on this, but Melissa, do you want to shed light on it, or do we go to Jeff?
Yeah, and I've been working with Jeff, and he probably has a lot more insight into this, but I believe there was an accounting error which led to a tax payment being applied to a late fee, which resulted in late fees on a second parcel of property owned by the same property owner. So, Jeff, if you had anything further.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, the homeowner or the property owner called me and pointed that out. And I was able to research it and see that, yes, a property tax check from in 2011 was improperly applied as a penalty. And the second property has accrued interest or penalties since 2011.
So just to be clear, you would be declaring as uncollectible these penalties which have accrued, not the real property taxes. So what you're looking to do is to give the treasurer the ability to then reapply that check that came in to the appropriate taxes. So.
And we're
that's-
talking $498.20.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So is there a motion to authorize the village treasurer to adjust the official books and records of the village of Dobbsbury to reflect this uncollectible balance of $498.20? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Rosenberg, all in favor? That passes unanimously. Okay, and the final resolution is to approve the audit of claims as submitted and recommended by the village treasurer. Jeff, is there anything you want to shed a light on about that?
No, typical claims audit.
Okay. Is there a motion? Trustee Patino, second. Trustee Rosenberg, all in favor? Okay, that passes unanimously. Now we're up to the trustee liaison reports. I don't have in front of me each of the meetings that happened, but I'll just run it through. Donna, any meetings happen for your committee?
Yeah, excuse me. First of all, the planning board, 54 Clinton Avenue, which is the Women's Club, has been approved. And, you know, they've really done a really great job preserving that building, so that's very good. The Sacred Heart parking lot was also is going to be passed to us. With the recommendation to approve it.
Which parking lot is that? I'm sorry.
Sacred Heart.
Sacred
We
Heart.
have to approve it because it's in the gateway.
You had referred that to the
We
planning board.
referred it to the planning board
for their
and they looked at it. They've approved to recommend it back to us for approval.
So we're looking to get that back on the agenda so you can then set a public hearing on the site plan itself.
Sounds good.
Right. I have a senior report too, if I could do that now.
Go ahead.
The exercise classes are starting up slowly, obviously they're not in full swing yet, but if you're interested, call Abby at 693-0024 to find out about them and the availability. And also, you probably, I don't know if you saw the article in the Times this weekend, but seniors are suffering greatly from this pandemic. There's food insecurity, there's isolation, there are financial issues. They're suffering greatly from this. Abby and the Senior Center do have a number of resources. So if anybody needs help with anything, again, they should call Abby at 693-0024. That's it.
Thank you. Larry, do you have anything?
No, not for this meeting.
Nicole?
Youth Services Council has spoken with the school and they're going to reopen the gym for teen nights or whatever they call it. I don't know. The kids can go. The first one will be this Friday, I think at 6 p.m. And the next one will be March 11th. That's all I have.
Okay. Mike, do you have, oh, Shari, sorry, do you have anything?
The Human Rights and Diversity Committee is working with the Greenberg Human Rights Advisory Committee to just help them to spread the word about an event that's happening on February 26th at 3 p.m. on Zoom. It's an honest discussion on racism. I did send the flyer, so hopefully we could share that. They're also going to be meeting with Melissa to talk about different proposals and things for Black History Month, and also probably be setting up a meeting with the Westchester County Human Rights Commission. They have a presentation on housing discrimination, which crosses a lot of boundaries, but is something that's of importance to the Human Rights and Diversity Committee. Also speaking with Jessica from the Downtown Committee on what their priorities are moving forward. The River Towns Chamber received an allotment of rapid test kits from Westchester County, and they are sharing them not just with chamber members, but with all businesses. So if anyone knows any businesses who could use the test kits, especially for employees who fear they've been exposed or who have a lot of public contact, they can get in touch with Michelle Adams from the River Towns Chamber or reach out to me and I'll help you make that connection. And that's it.
Mike, do you have anything?
I don't. The CIB didn't have a meeting, although we did receive comments from them on the tree code. Tree Commission has a smaller agenda. Nothing to report really in the zoning board. Didn't have anything.
Mike, do you have anything?
Nothing big from meetings now.
Okay. Any announcements? Yeah, I do want to announce that the Look Cinema in Rivertown Square is opening up. So that's great news that they've been empty for quite a while. So it's exciting news that they will open up and be showing movies as of this weekend. I will be there on the 10th to cut the ribbon to open it up again. So we'll see how it looks. And I also want to thank
What are they playing?
they're playing, I think,
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
it's got to be Spider-Man.
Now they're showing 3 different movies. You have an
Right.
option to pick.
Spider-Man, Marry Me, and I don't know.
Death on the Nile. Death on the Nile.
Harry's definitely been there several times already.
I'm going to be at the ribbon cutting for the county, so.
So Mike, if you want to get a ticket or whatever, you want to see one of those movies.
I don't know what the second 2 are, but
Spider-Man's supposed to be great.
sorry to interrupt.
It's okay.
I did get that we got an invitation as trustees to join, but depending on what they're playing.
Right, so you could just come for the opening and leave, but you're right. So I'll see some of you there. And I also wanted to thank the Human Rights Committee. They've had a very busy month, and I want to thank them for taking the time to write and raise awareness for Martin Luther King. February is honoring thank you, Black History Month. And they also did the Holocaust Remembrance, which I think was very well received. I've gotten some emails regarding that as well. So I want to thank them for taking the time to honor those events and to raise awareness. And I know it's taking a lot of time to write them, and I appreciate it. And I want to thank Shari for her involvement with that as well. So thank you for that. So if there's no other further announcements, I'll take a motion to adjourn this meeting. Trustee Rosen Asher, Trustee Patino, all in favor? This meeting is